to raise the question about, because besides the people, or the mob, more or less, we also have different so-called educators through journalists who have also affected the atmosphere. And there are also reports that some journalists were paid by the government during the pre-trial. There's one journalist, Pablo Alfonso. He's a big journalist in the South Florida area. He was paid $175,000 US in order to create or to influence the atmosphere towards more hatred, as Kenneth just said. But still, nevertheless, it's very remarkable that the trial was held in Miami despite all the objections. Could you perhaps kind of, in fact you already mentioned it, but could you just repeat and talk some more about how come you think it was still insisted upon to be there?
Well, we've all seen American shows on television. A prosecutor is making a career. A prosecutor wants to win their case and they want publicity. For this prosecutor, it was very important to win this case and get a terribly hard sentence, because this would be a very good career move from the point of view of the prosecutor. But the reason the prosecutor wanted to make a career move, in my opinion, was not interested in justice in this case, and was willing to sacrifice, and they proved that all along by invoking this SIPA act to make all of the documents, including all the documents which were taken from the Five's own homes, secret. What was the secret about them, except to make them secret from the defendants themselves? I mean, that's what they had. So there was the prosecution was not interested in giving these 5 Cubans a fair trial. That is absolutely clear.
But this was after all appealed, and in Sweden we would call that something perhaps hovrätten, which would be the nearest example here in Sweden. However, as you said, the three judges, they actually agreed upon the fact that they had not been received or given a fair trial. But now, as you also said, this decision was cancelled and remade. Now, my question is this something as usual?
That's very unusual. Very unusual. That you would question a 3-judge decision of that sort, which did not declare them not guilty. All it declared was that there has to be a new trial because this trial was not fair. So, I've seen comments from American lawyers where they say that this is almost unheard of, that someone. But this was apparently on a direct order from President Bush, because it was the Attorney General, his Attorney General, who made the decision to appeal to the plenary court, the entire court, to try to reverse this decision, which is a very strong signal to these guys. I mean, it's coming directly from the White House, so they're not supposed to be influenced by politics, of course. But they were. And I would say that it's equally scandalous that the Supreme Court had refused to take up this case. They mentioned it in this BBC. In 2009, they refused to take up the case. And this is very strange, because there were so many dissenting opinions amongst the judges themselves concerning this case, that normally a Supreme Court doesn't want to take up cases unless there's something important which has to be dealt with, that you have to explain to the lower courts which standard should be the accepted standard to how you interpret the law. And this was a clear case. Since all these judges had different opinions, then it was a case that should have been taken up by the Supreme Court. And in the appeal, it was pointed out, when you appeal to the Supreme Court, even individuals and organizations can also make amicable contributions. So there were a whole series of such contributions which explained that the standard decided by this plenary decision, en banc decision of this Court of Appeal, was contrary to the standard used in most other jurisdictions. And so this should be something, this is a federal court, this is something that the Supreme Court should have decided, told the whole country which standard is correct. Is it the standard that these 10 judges decided again, or is it the standard that the 3 judges decided, or which is used in the rest of the country? And they refused. But there's a majority of conservative judges in the Supreme Court, or was. Now it's maybe almost even.
And just to once again relate this to Sweden, this could be compared to something that's called prövningstillstånd, which I guess some of you are fully aware of. Now, in the US, or I think even in the common law system as a whole, there is this way of influence, which is within the law, that is, to influence whether a case should be prövad eller inte. And, well, it's called this amicus brief. Now, 12 such were sent to the Supreme Court, and this is historical. It has never ever happened before. And amongst them sending it, you find the National Conference of the US lawyers. You find 8 Nobel Prize winners. Oh, sorry. Thank you for the correction. It's 10. So that's also very, very odd. And also, I just want to mention one more thing about the legal aspects in Miami. How was the jury chosen? Could you mention something about that?
Well, of course, once you're in Miami, it's impossible to have a jury that could really respond to the law, taking in account that this organization had killed people in Miami and had put bombs in even places where you can expose paintings from Cuban artists that lived in Cuba. That's first. And also, the selection of the jury was very controversial, and because, for instance, the African Americans were taken out of the jury. Some of the jurors were descendants from these Cuban Americans that are in Miami and have rebelled against Cuba. So it's very hard to have a jury. Well, it's an explanation. I mean, an example is that after 6 months of trial, after the instruction of the judge to the jurors that was very complicated, very complex, after 6 months of evidence and non-evidence and arguments, the jurors didn't need more than a day to say that they were, than hours to say that they were guilty. It was no discussion, and it was unanimous. So, as you see, it was preconceived, this idea. And of course, as you said before, the jurors, they were taking pictures of the jurors and of their plates in the car. So how can you expect them to put them up there for these organizations, just to make justice to this fight? It will take a lot of courage to do this.
Unfortunately, also in America, jurors have been known to be interviewed after, during they're not allowed, but after they've actually made a decision and the case has been settled. So it would be sufficient that one juror would accept to be interviewed and tell what the other, or which ones had voted which way for them to be in danger. And I don't believe there's any law in America that forbids them from doing that. In Sweden, we have a law that does forbid nämndemän lay judges from discussing what went on in the closed deliberations. It has been broken sometimes, but then they're kicked out because they've committed a crime, in fact. But in America, they love to interview jurors, and they often are on television and so on. And so you could not say that a juror was safe in that situation. In addition, these jurors were not cut off from the world. You know, sometimes you see on TV how they send a jury and make them stay in a motel or something like that. These people were not they were not sequestered, which is the English word. So that means they went home every evening. And the court actually had to change the rules because they were being bothered as they were leaving the court and being attacked, not attacked physically, but being confronted with journalists and people taking pictures and all like that. So they had to even make special arrangements so that they could leave the court, but they still didn't sequester the jury. So the jury was going home every day and watching TV. Okay, they excluded all Cuban Americans from the jury. So there was not one single Cuban American on the jury. This was possible to do. But then, even if the majority, most of them were probably just normal English-speaking Americans, still, they would undoubtedly feel the pressure. How could they not? And there were demonstrations outside. I mean, people in paramilitary uniforms demonstrating outside. You should see these people from several of these organizations. I mean, they look more or less like fascists or something. And they're dangerous people.